What's going on, everyone? My name is Benjamin Nowak with Monster Bass, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the basics of fishing a vibrating jig, or a bladed jig, or a chatterbait as most people refer to them. We're going to talk about everything you need to know to go out and throw this bait with confidence. Where to throw it, when to throw it, what sizes to throw, rod, reel, line setup, as well as the trailers that I like to throw when I'm fishing a bladed jig. So let's start by talking about where you're going to throw this, because this isn't a bait you can just go cast out anywhere and catch fish. Now, it does have natural action. This blade moves side to side. It creates a lot of commotion in the water, but it works best when you're fishing it around shallow grass. It's sort of grass that's growing in less than 10 foot of water is where this bait is really going to shine. Now, the reason for that, this blade out in front makes this jig wobble side to side. It creates a lot of action, but what this does is when it hits that grass, it allows you to rip this bait really free without fouling up the hook, without getting a bunch of grass on your bait. So it works best when you're fishing it around shallow grass. Now, conversely, it doesn't work great around shallow wood or shallow rock, because what happens is there's not a lot of room for error. If you bounce around something and this hook point rolls, more than likely it's going to hook on that tree. It's going to get caught on a rock. So it's really a grass fishing bait or a search tool when you're looking to find active or aggressive fish. Now let's talk about the sizes that I'm throwing. Most typically I'm throwing 3/8 ounce or a 1/2 ounce size. Anytime I'm fishing less than 10 foot of water, those are the two sizes that I'm going with, depending on how deep that grass is growing. Now, if I can get away throwing a 3/8 ounce size, that's going to keep that bait up higher in the water column. It's going to allow me to fish this bait a little bit more effectively, but if the grass is kind of growing deeper, I want a bait that's going to ride deeper so I can basically tick the tops of the grass. So you're going to change the size of the bait that you're throwing depending on how high the grass is growing. You basically just want to get this bait down at the very top of the grass, let it hit the top of the grass, rip it free, and a lot of times when you pop that bait free, that's when you're going to get a lot of your strikes. So fish as light of a weight as possible. Just keep it right above the top of the grass. When you hit the grass, pop your rod. It's going to cause this bait to kind of pull forward. You'll get a reaction strike, and that's when a lot of these big fish are going to bite. Now, a lot of people think of this as like a numbers bait, a search tool, but my boy Alex Rudd actually just put a 24.5 pound bag in the boat on Lake Chickamauga with a vibrating jig, so it catches a lot of really big fish. It's a great tool to cover water, but it's also a great tool to trigger strikes from bass that you know that are living in an area. So now that we talk about where I'm going to throw it and the sizes I'm throwing, let's start to talk about the colors that I'm going to throw. And I typically keep it really natural. I like to fish baits that look like the forage I'm fishing around. Now, this bait has a lot of movement in the water, it has a lot of draw to it naturally, so I don't feel you need to go to crazy colors like black and blues and bright chartreuses. I keep it extremely natural. If I know they're feeding on bluegills, I'm going to go with a green pumpkin. If I know they're feeding on shad, you can go with a white or white and chartreuse. If you know they're feeding on, little smoky colored bait fish, you can go with a smoke color with a little bit of red, like the chatterbait I have right here. But most of the times I'm fishing supernatural colors, your green pumpkins, your watermelons, your whites. Maybe I'll throw in a little bit of red if I think they're keying in on crawfish, but supernatural colors is what I like to stick with when I'm fishing a vibrating jig. Let's start to talk about the rod, reel, and line setup, and what makes this bait so effective is that you can fish it really on any rod, reel, and line that you have confidence in, but preferred is a bait caster. Now, more importantly, I like to throw it on a slower or more moderate action bait caster, and the reason for that is a lot of times when those fish eat this bait, they'll come up behind it, want to push it, and with a slower action, it allows you not to rip the hook away from those fish, allows them to eat it a little bit better than if you were throwing on a fast action. So I throw it on a 7'3", medium heavy, moderate fast rod. Like I mentioned, it's a little bit slower tip, and that 7'3" really allows me to make a long cast. I'm throwing it on a bait casting setup with 17-pound fluorocarbon line and a 6/4-to-1 reel. It's a little bit slower gear ratio, more moderate gear ratio reel. Helps me keep that bait coming slower through the water column. One thing you don't necessarily want to do is burn this bait back to the boat, because those fish come up behind it and they eat it, and if you're burning it really fast, they typically don't get the bait as well as if you're reeling it a little bit more slowly. Also, the bait doesn't run as true if you're burning it back to the boat. So 7'3", medium heavy, moderate fast, 6/4-to-1 gear ratio reel, 17-pound test line is my preferred setup when I'm fishing a vibrating jig. But really just go out, throw it on your favorite setup, and it's a great way to draw a lot of bites. So now that we've covered basically everything you need to know about the bait itself, how to throw it, where to throw it, when to throw it, we're going to talk about the trailers that I like to put on the back of a vibrating jig. And there are a couple different types of trailers, really 3 different types. You have a craw style, you have a straight tail style, and then you have more of that finesse style that you can put on the back of a vibrating jig. Starting with the craw style bait, this is something I'll throw when I want to keep that bait higher in the water column. It's a bulky presentation. These claws are going to be flapping, going crazy, and what that's going to do is it's going to give the bait more lift. So when you put a craw style presentation on the back of a vibrating jig, these craws are going to be flapping and is going to keep that bait higher in the water column. It's going to allow you to fish it a little bit slower, and it's something that works a lot better in colder water. The colder the water, the more I like to add a flapping style presentation like this, and it's going to keep that bait higher on the water column. Now, the next style of bait that you can put on the back is a finesse kicking presentation like a Strike King Rage Menace grub. And what this is, it's a very slender profile. These tails barely kick, they don't move a ton of water, but it's going to allow you to fish this bait faster. It's going to allow you to get that bait lower in the water column, and it's going to provide a very finesse presentation off the back. You could also put a small swim bait off the back and rig that bait up on the back of a swim bait. That's something else I would consider a finesse presentation, is a swim bait, because it's not going to have a ton of crazy action off the back. It's just going to kick subtly. It's going to look really natural coming through the water, and it's going to allow you to fish this bait effectively through the grass in a little bit deeper water situations. And now as we move to my last 2 types, or last 1 type of trailer, we're going to get into something that's become really popular over the last couple of years, and that's a straight tail presentation off the back of the bait. And now this is a Zoom fluke, and when you rig that bait on there, it's going to have a lot of natural movement. This tail is going to kick based on that blade, but it's going to be super finesse. Same thing with this Gary Yamamoto Seiko. This thing's not going to move side to side a ton. It just kind of wiggles through the water really naturally. It's not going to have any counteraction to that blade. So wherever that blade goes, this tail goes. So both of these presentations are good when you're looking for a natural bait fish imitator. So if you have the fluke, you're going to be imitating more of like a shad profile with a very tight wobble. And you can do the same thing with the Gary Yamamoto Seiko. It's going to basically wobble back and forth, have a natural profile coming through the water. It's going to catch a lot of fish, and this is probably my all-time favorite presentation to put on the back of a chatterbait. Looks super natural, looks like a ton of different bait fish. You can make it look like a shad, you can make it look like a bluegill, a perch, anything or any type of bait fish those fish are feeding on. This straight tail sort of presentation is going to be super natural and look just like what those big fish are eating. Super quick breakdown, basic breakdown on how to fish a vibrating jig. If you guys have any questions or comments, let us know in the comment section below. I'll be down there responding to each and every one of those personally. And I hope this helps you have more confidence in taking a bladed or vibrating jig out to your home body of water and catch fish. Thank you guys for watching. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. And as always, we'll talk to you guys later.